Hi there. This is part of my series of notes that I'm just taking to help people understand a little bit as I understand it. I have been in so many courses and classes over the course of the last 25 years. I have learned so many things, and I wanted to try and help impart some of those in a more lasting format than just talking to the people around me. So this is part of my series. You're welcome to listen to it. Please don't presume that this carries any industry or government examination or credentials, because it doesn't. It's just me talking about things I've learned, trying to help you get a little smarter too. This is a document I wrote called A People-Centric versus a Process-Centric Services Delivery Approach. When you're delivering services, there are sort of two different ways that you can approach it. One of which is to say that your service, or in your mind, your services are sort of focused on a people delivery, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And the other is to focus on a process approach. So let me describe to you what I mean by that. At the very top, we talk about, top left, it says people-centric description. When you have people-centric service delivery activities, often, very often, the people who are part of that are honestly the hardest workers in your organization. There is usually a high level of individual skill knowledge, and they tend to lean toward being specialists in what they do. I put down knights on steeds. Basically what it means is if somebody needs a real go-to person to fix their issue, they know who to go talk to. And that's why I say knights on steeds. They'll ignore the whole process. They'll just go to the person that can help me get things fixed. There is usually a high group knowledge and a high synergy among the group, because the group works among themselves. They learn each other's skills and tend to sort of compensate. If I want the absolute best person on a certain thing, I know who to go to. The issue is the customers do as well. And this team usually enjoys working with each other. There's usually a pretty high team rapport. But the issue, one of the issues I'll say, new teammates as they come on may take a while before they become fully productive, because they have to learn how things are done in this particular organization. Instead of arriving with their skills and knowledges and being able to put them to immediate use, they end up having to learn more about how we do business and where you fit into the process. Whereas if we look over at the process-centric approach, the services you provide are generally defined in relation to the client's organizational business needs. In other words, your services support their business, and you try really hard to help them understand how your services support their business. Okay, the services are usually pretty well defined as well. Instead of just, I need IT, which is the way things worked 20 years ago, you have specific services provided by specific people to specific people at specific levels of service, etc., etc. So you are able to specify and define services a little better. You use processes to deliver your services, and those are also defined, measurable, and repeatable. And I think that's pretty important as we go down here. In the process approach, you tend to have a broad group of people that possess broad individual skill sets. I call them generalists in comparison to the people-centric, where they are what I would call specialists. As far as documentation, I've actually encountered this with more than one person. The person says, I'm too busy doing my job to document what I'm doing. And the issue with that is that if the person, for whatever reason, they win the lottery and they don't show up tomorrow, you're out of luck as far as a particular activity if it was just in that person's head. So you fail because that person wouldn't give you information on how the services you need that you hired them to do are done. You relied on them too heavily. Now, here's a quote, and it says 80% chance of success. Let me go to the next page and show you this. I learned this from a very wise man. He says a properly documented SOP is one in which the uninitiated can pick it up and follow it and have an 80% chance at success. So when we talk about an 80% chance of success, what we're talking about is procedures are documented. What you do and how you do it is written down so that somebody else can come and do it as well. In terms of managing, I sort of, and this is very general, but I say that managers in a people-centric business manage the people. In a process-centric approach, you tend to focus more on managing the services because the people fit within the services structure. So you try and help give them well-defined, well-outlined anticipation and expectations of the services they're supposed to deliver and how. So you manage the services. For departures, if you have a team and somebody leaves, a departure in the people-centric team is pretty painful. Let's say you have a whole team and they tend to specialize. One person is the go-to person for SCCM, for example. That person leaves, you lose SCCM capability for the entire team, for your entire project, for your entire whatever, unless that skill can be found in someone else in a people-centric approach. In a process-centric approach, departures are often less painful because you've had the opportunity to take the knowledge and put it into your organization rather than having it rest in individual people. As far as replenishment is concerned, if somebody leaves and they need to be replaced, it's difficult because you have to be looking for someone with the specific skills of the person who just left. And that's pretty difficult sometimes. Replenishment in a process-centric approach, however, is often quicker and requires less focus on specific skills. Instead, what you're looking for is one who possesses a number of skills. Skills in a group of tools, the tools that you work with and manage and support. For measurement, if you're measuring your success, sometimes in a people-centric approach, I call it sweat of the brow, long hours, making sure that when somebody calls, they always get the same person, etc. The individuals are defining the process or the services delivered more than the process defines the services delivered. And in a process-centric approach, you have defined services and the standards needed to achieve them. They're written and there's no misunderstandings if they're properly communicated to the customer. If you want to determine adequate staffing and skills, the difficulty these days is we in the IT industry are required to prove how much we require and how we have to quantify that. 20 years ago, we used to be able to say, I need 7 IT people instead of 6. And the government would say, well, okay, they have to do this and this and this and this and this. Okay. That's not done these days. Everything is focused down toward services instead of people. So instead of sweat equity and work backlogs, look at how many tickets we've opened, etc. You have defined, documented, and repeatable processes. You can actually find industry best practices. You can find industry measurements and processes, just like medical billing or auto repair. If you go to a garage and you say, I need my brake drum replaced on a 1999 Volvo, they're going to look in their book and they know exactly what skill level it takes, what level of certification it takes, and how long, on average, it will take to do that. And that's what your bill shows up as. So IT is coming close to that level of specificity where you can actually define processes and how much work is needed to get it done and the staff skill levels to do it. In a surge condition, it's very difficult for a people-oriented team to handle surges because they already work so hard in the first place. So, typically what happens, the manager says, we're really overworked. And the response is, gee, I'm sorry, but we have this emergency and you have to work harder. So you're working really hard, and the answer is work even harder. Well, that doesn't work after a while. So in a defined process-centric mode, you can actually define your services and scale them and staff appropriately based on industry measurements. You could say it takes this many tickets per person, I have this many tickets coming in, I can justify another person. Costs. In an old IT infrastructure that was people-centric, very hard to calculate. In the newer one, it's usually, or we try to put it to a per service level. And it's based on whether it was completed to the customer's satisfaction. I have down here ability to respond to, and I'm trying to figure out if that's what that's ability to respond to. Organizational changes. Okay. In a people-centric approach, it usually requires the acquisition of new teammates because everybody on the team, it has their own specialties. Something new comes in, you don't possess that specialty. So you have to go find somebody with that specialty. You end up overstaffing because you have to find somebody with that specialty in a people-centric approach. But in a process-centric approach, your services are aligned to the business processes, and if the business processes change, the services must change, and therefore you can redefine what team is necessary and at what levels of service the customer wants them. So it's easier to define changes. Some of the advantages I've seen with a people-centric approach, there's high individual and team esteem. You go home at night with sweat on your brow and you say, I worked really hard and made a lot of people happy. There's a tremendous sense of camaraderie and team spirit within the team. It's fun working for a people-centric group. At work, people often come straight to you because you're the person that gets things done. There's really high, you get a real good feeling about that because, the general secretary comes straight to you to get things done. That's a perk. It makes you feel really good inside. The advantage to a process-centric approach, you can have broader individual skill levels. So instead of being a specialist, you're a generalist, and you can apply your skills to more things. Your work is usually less frantic. In other words, you feel like you're being pulled around less. It's easier to define roles and services and to measure team and individual performance within the team. So those are some of the advantages. Now, disadvantages I've found with the people-centric approach, it's difficult to define, measure, and adequately staff your team. You have high levels of fatigue. People get tired being the knight in shining armor all the time, and you end up with a high level of burnout. People get tired and go somewhere where they don't have to spend 18 hours a day working. And also it may be tough for you to find a job if that's your focus, because you are only specialist at this particular bit of work and not as a generalist across all IT services or a large number of them. An advantage or a disadvantage of a services or process-centric approach is that some people may get to feel like it's uncaring or impersonal. You say, I'm just a number, or I just fit within the team or the process. But in the end, you can apply broader skill levels to yourself. You can learn across broader things. You can practice across broader things. Your work is more studied and focused instead of being frantic and reactionary. And honestly, I prefer the process-centric approach to the people-centric approach, and these are some of the reasons why.